Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Talbot here for you again. We're going to be looking now into topic 2.3, another trading network, but this one, instead of being overland like the Silk Road, is going to be our ocean-going trade routes across the Indian Ocean. And we're going to see it's going to stretch all the way from like the Swahili coast here to India, of course, and then also all over kind of Southeast Asia and Indonesia. So kind of some learning objectives here for you. We're looking at the growth of networks. Again, you can always pause this slide and use it kind of to guide your notes, maybe outline your notes, the effects of those growing networks, and then how the environment kind of affects how these trade networks get set up. So I'm going to steal a term from John Green. He calls the Indian Ocean Trade Network the monsoon marketplace, which is a bit easier to remember, more like the Silk Road is easy to remember, whereas the Indian Ocean Trading Network can be kind of just, a little bit academic and boring. The first thing to understand, kind of, these are some of the major points along the Indian Ocean trade. So again, this goes all the way from the east coast of Africa, and there's some islands off the east coast of Africa, like Zanzibar, up into the Arabian Peninsula. Egypt's connected through the traders in Arabia. That also means Europe is going to be getting goods via this trade route. And then we've got, of course, India. And then, like I said, what's going on in kind of Malaysia, Indonesia, China. All these things are going to be involved. So the way this trade route gets set up is, it's over ocean, but there's no satellites or GPS or anything like that. So the way these places kind of get selected to be part of the trade route is pretty much just happens naturally because of what's going on with nature. So you have monsoon winds, which seasonally, during winter, they're going to blow one direction, and summer they blow a different direction. So that allows you to kind of use those winds, as long as you've got some kind of sailing ship, to get across the ocean in relatively quick times. And also, because it's seasonal, it's predictable, and this lets you actually set up a trade network. So merchants would kind of, for half the year be using the winds to travel one way, and the other half they'd be using them to travel back. And so understanding those trade routes, along with some other developments, help this trade be set up from a very early time period. So, by 100 CE, Malaysians had made it all the way to Madagascar, we're pretty sure, from an archaeological standpoint. The Phoenicians of North Africa and the Egyptians, they're trading up and down kind of the Red Sea here. Merchants from Rome are going to be able to get things all the way from India and East Africa and East Asia. And then the Chinese were trading with India as well. And while it looks like, well, why didn't the Chinese just go over land? Got to remember the Himalayan mountains are there, so they were using this trade route to go over the ocean. So we're going to see India becomes kind of the center of this trade network. I mean that in the literal standpoint, it's in the middle of the Indian Ocean, kind of the dagger of Asia that points down into Asia. The way these monsoon winds carry, that's where you would kind of end up naturally. But then also is figuratively, because we know India is a center of astronomy, a center of mathematics, a center of writing. And so they're going to be writing a lot of the things that get spread around this trade network. And they're also going to produce some other things as well, which we'll see. One of the things that happens much later in the story, in the early 1400s, is there's a Chinese admiral named Zheng He. Now, an interesting thing about Zheng He is he's a Muslim, which tells you kind of the influence these Islamic traders and merchants have been spreading Islam, for about 400 or 500 years now. And Zheng He converted to Islam. Well, he kind of sets out on these voyages in kind of this massive armada of ships, massive ships as well. To give you some sense of scale, this is in a mall in Dubai. But the small scale model here, that's Christopher Columbus's flagship, the Santa Maria. The ship behind here is the ship that Zheng He's flagship was. So much larger vessels. And really, these ships were less about exploration, because China kind of knew relatively what was out there, where they were going across the Indian Ocean, because they've been doing it for centuries. But it's more about showing the power of the Ming Dynasty, kind of tamping down on some piracy. And it's also about collecting tribute to be paid to China. And so this kind of increases China's influence in the area. But we're going to see kind of no one group controls the Indian Ocean Trade Network, or like the Mongols kind of eventually control pretty much almost all the Silk Road. We don't see the same thing happen in the Indian Ocean. It's kind of more just little city states and kind of things like that. Interesting about Jing He is, as successful as these voyages were and great, after Jing He returns for the final time, a new emperor comes to power, and he's not a fan of looking out. Some Confucian scholars are kind of convinced him that's a bad idea. That engaging with these other cultures doesn't help China. We're better than the other cultures anyways, which in a lot of ways China was from a technological standpoint. So they're going to kind of close their doors off to the rest of the world, which is how China goes from being, the most technologically advanced and dominant power of the age to, 500 years, they kind of let everyone else around them develop where they stay pretty stagnant. And as a result, they're going to need to do some quick redevelopment in the 1800s. All right, so continuing with our kind of what's going on in the world, we're going to kind of shift gears now a little bit to what's going on in Africa and Arabia. So Africa is also going to be, it's already been for centuries engaged in kind of the Eastern Arab slave trade, where Africans have been taken by these Muslim traders and Muslim slave traders. And they're going to be forcing millions of Africans to places like Arabia, Mesopotamia, other parts of Asia. And the reason these East Africans were being taken to become slaves was because as Dar al-Islam spreads further and further and further, you can't, by Muslim law, enslave a fellow Muslim. So they had to go to somewhere where Islam had not been spread to, and so they went to East Africa. We already talked about with Zheng He, how the Islam had spread. Again, Prophet Muhammad's coming on the scene, 600-ish CE. And so as that spreads, now you have more connections between the people in these different trading cities. So Islam spreads, and so people want to trade with the other Muslims. And so that connection increases the trade. And then we also see that people are wanting more and more specialized products. So you have kind of the fancier things coming from the Mediterranean, wine, ceramics. Okay. But then there's also going to be from Africa, luxury goods like ivory and gold. But then you also are going to see slaves, wildlife, those kind of things. And then Arabia, we're also going to see some food stuff coming from Southeast Asia, rice. And so there's kind of a mix of things that are valuable that only the wealthy can get. But then also we're going to see there's things that everyday people will benefit, things like lumber from Africa. One of the advantages of the Indian Ocean trading network compared to the Silk Road's all kind of done by camel. Well, you can't really carry big loads of stuff. So instead, you carry very valuable small things that are easy to transport. Things like silk go along the Silk Road. Here, we can carry larger quantities of things. So that's and heavier things. So that's why you're going to see more gold being transferred during the Indian Ocean trading network, lumber, food, that kind of thing. So the last thing we're going to focus on in this video is we took kind of the why of this trade is happening. We're going to look now into the how. So we've seen some developments. Yeah, the compass had been around for, almost 1,000 years by the time we get to the 12th century. But the mechanical compass is going to be more useful on ships because you kind of could, just hold it in your hands. And so with that, it's going to be a lot more practical to use it for seafaring. And as a result, kind of China is going to invent the compass, but then it's also improved by the English and by Arabs over the centuries. It's becoming more and more useful for seafaring. The astrolabe is invented by the Greeks while they're still part of the Roman Empire, but it's going to be improved upon by the Muslims. So while the Europeans are kind of in their quote-unquote middle or dark ages, we're going to see improvements made. And when the astrolabe is used for, we'll see a picture shortly, is kind of tell you where your line of latitude is. So how far you are from the equator. It tells you a lot of other things as well. So this made it a lot easier to travel long distances and travel by star. Ships are getting bigger. We're going to see a Chinese junk. They had these sails. They had rudders and better keels. These are things that allowed them to have more mobile and ships that could travel more accurately. And we're going to talk about kind of the knowledge of the monsoons. And with that, we also have, so you combine knowing about the monsoon winds. You've got the compass. This is an astrolabe here. Triangular sails that can sail against the wind. And finally, this is called a Chinese junk sail with a rudder. That's where I'll finish it for today.